there's your cat's cradle block. And you would then be sewing them to make that outer border. All right, so now to do the ruler method. And this is my favorite method because it takes the bias triangles completely out of the picture. So the rulers, the Cats Cradle rulers, tell you right on the ruler the size that you need. So finished size, for this one, the finished size is a 3-inch square. So then if I go across, I need to cut 2 2¼ inch squares. That becomes this part of the block, the 2¼ Then you need to cut 2 2¼ by 3¼ Those are going to be your backgrounds because we're going to be making 2 at a time versus 1 at a time. So it's like kind of like a half square triangle traditional method. It'll make sense here in a minute. And then you will also need to cut 1 4 by 5 inch rectangle, and that becomes the big triangle. So first row is a square, second column, second column is the background, third column is the big triangle. So the more you use it, the more familiar you get, but it does come with really great directions and it tells you what goes where. So first we would cut those pieces, which we've got here. We've got our 2 2¼ inch squares. We've got our 2 2¼ by 3 inch rectangles and our 1 4 by 5 rectangle. So first step is you sew a square to a rectangle and a square to a rectangle. Okay. And once you've done that, the next step, here's our square and rectangle, square and rectangle. The next step is you flip one of them and you put these together and you sew across the seam. You sew it like that. And you can see here, this is a good example for you guys. When you're sewing, sometimes things get distorted. Just push that up a little and that edge will align. Don't get really worried and hung up on these little tiny details because again, just a little nudging will put it into place. So once we've got those sewn, oh, wait a minute. Missing a step. Once we've got those sewn, oh, here we go, like that. Then what you need to do, it's sewn like this. You fold this in half and align these edges, and you take small scissors and you clip the seam up to the stitching, but not through it, just right up to it. And then once you do that, you can then push this down, and this up, and press it so that all of the seams on your square are going towards the background. Okay, and that is in the directions. They tell you how to do that, so it's really easy to do. So then once you've done that, then you would put the 2 pieces together. And we need to mark our back. And this is where I use a fabric pen and you use the ruler. And how you do this, I'm going to put this on this board so it's easier for you guys to see, I think. What you do is we have a 3-inch, oh, here, you say place on seam line. Place on seam line. So you're going to align those 2 on my sewn lines. And then you're going to take a fabric pen, which I love these Friction pens for this. And you're basically drawing a line on the, well, you are drawing a line following the ruler edge. Now, this doesn't have to be super, super accurate because we're going to square them up, but as close as you can get will help you out. So then again, we're going to flip it over, align the 2 pieces. And again, these are not sewn together, so this one's shifted. Align the 2 pieces, draw the line out, draw the line out. And now I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine and I will sew on these drawings. So you want to make sure this line goes right through that intersection and this line goes right through that intersection. You're going to sew on those lines. And then once they're sewn, here it is sewn, you end up with something that looks like this. Okay. And then we need to cut. So what you would do is you would take on this ruler, there's a 1/4 inch seam allowance line. You can line that up with the line and cut. And then you'd flip this over and cut. Now I have a quilt called Dancing Dots. It has 150 of these. There's a lot of them. I actually just stacked them up and cut them all at once. So I would lay them out like this on my cutting mat, and I just cut because it was faster. But the correct way is to lay the ruler on, cut, turn, flip, cut. That gets you this with a little bit of scrap in the middle. And then we're ready to press these open. So again, to press, we're going to press to the big triangle. A rule of thumb when pressing, when you're trying to decide which way to press, it's like, do I press this way or do I press this way? What I consider is how many seams am I pressing up to? In this case, there's no seams. It's a solid piece of fabric. That seam is going to lay flat. If I flip it this way and press, I've got 2 seams that I'm dealing with, which is going to create bulk right here. And the whole point of pressing is to get rid of your bulk and you have everything flat. So in this case, no matter what color it is, light or dark, I would press to the larger triangle because this is going to lay flatter. So when you are doing this at home, just flip this up and feel it. Don't iron it, but feel how thick that feels versus how thick that feels. You'll know what I'm talking about. So again, we're going to take the edge of the iron, press it into the seam, and not go out to either end. And there's that. And then we have these dog ears, but we don't need to worry about the dog ears this time because this time we're going to square them up. My favorite tool for squaring things up is the Martelli cutting turntable. And this guy, he stays on my cutting table anytime I have to square anything up or cut templates or anything that I have to rotate. This is what I use. So then I have my block. I have my Cat's Cradle Ruler. And we know we have a 3-inch finished. So we look here. We look here, and the 3 inches is that line is right there. That line gets put on the square, and we're going to square it up. So let me do that. And again, you saw this came from 2 squares and 3 rectangles. We didn't have to cut any triangles. So I've got that side squared off, and you see how much you're trimming off. So that's why if those lines are a little bit off when you're drawing them, we have fudge factor. It's one of my favorite things about creative grid rulers is you make everything bigger and then you square it up. So in this case, on this side, you had the 3-inch square right here. There's also a diagonal that goes right across under each square. So when I rotate the block to trim the other side, we're going to use the diagonal of the 3-inch. We're going to align that diagonal with the seam of the half square triangle edge. And I align one corner, this edge right here, because this edge is squared. So I want to make sure that that diagonal line goes on my sewn line and it goes from edge to edge on the cream half square triangle part because that is already trimmed. We're only trimming away the black, the background. And then you square that away and there you go. So when I'm doing a lot of these, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, make sure you like and subscribe below. You can find the Whimsical Workshop on our website, thewhimsicalworkshop.com, and that has all links to all of our other social media platforms. Thanks for joining us.